Ragnar lost all his family to the dragons, forcing him to train to become the strongest hunter of dragons with divine abilities. In this world, dragons are superior in strength and ability because they have ancient magical blood. There were only two ways for a human to kill a dragon. They could put it in the sunlight, or with silver, which is basically the aura that emanates from a silver weapon. When this material comes into contact with the heart of the dragon, it freezes it and destroys it. As a result, those who had the ability to kill dragons became hunters. However, dragons were still able to attack cities and kill people very easily. Millions of people died, including hunters of dragons, from the kingdom, with the exception of one, Ragnar. He was the only survivor. He discovered where Ultimacia, the leader of the dragon lineage, would be. And he confronted them. He was determined to end them for everything they had done. He hated them with all his strength. But he ended up being beaten and lost. He was very weak. He was just an orphan, a complete failure. His parents ended up being eaten by dragons when he was only 3 years old. And some of his relatives welcomed him. One day after that, they were also eaten by dragons. So he was sold to a rich family. And a few months later, the dragons appeared. And they ate them too. In the end, he not only had no roof, but also began to suffer bullying. After all the dragons appeared whenever he was around. And they ended up killing everyone, except him, every time. It was as if he had been cursed to see everyone with whom he cares to die. And after 8 years, he was still cursed. Of course, he was defeated by the dragon of the blood lineage, but he was still alive. What made him want to die a lot? But Ultimacia prevented him. She knew Ragnar from the past. And how many times he had suffered for the dragons. She believed that this was God's will. And if it was his will, it could only mean one thing. That God wanted Ragnar as his new servant. Ultimacia then makes a blade with his blood and stabs him. She explains that he will forget everything because from now on, Ragnar will become a dragon. Ragnar screams in pain when the dragon's blood begins to mix with his body, making him feel like he was burning inside. He even remembers the name of a person. Lenika. He met her when he was suffering bullying. And she saved him by defeating his aggressors. She presented herself as a dragon hunter and asked him to join her. He was a little afraid that one day she could die too, and he would end up alone again. But she guaranteed that she was stronger than the dragons, so she wouldn't die. Ragnar finally met someone who would survive with him. They got together and went to hunt dragons, but Leo was doing most of the work. Since Ragnar was not so good in combat, she hunted the inferior dragons for years, and became the best dragon hunter in the city. She also became a kind of heroine for Ragnar. And he started to think that he was no longer cursed, all thanks to her. So he decided to take care of her, but he was still weak. But as he wanted to become more useful for his heroine, he started to train in secret. Even without any talent to hunt dragons, he knew that he would never be like Leo. But as long as he could help her before she died, for him it was all right. One day the city was attacked by a superior dragon, called Grimwild. After the city fell, Leo immediately left to fight. And Ragnar followed. People were dying everywhere. And Ragnar looked. He then saw Grimwild, who used blood magic. He could manipulate blood in the form of blades or flames. Ragnar tried to stop him, but his sword broke with impact. Grimwild counterattacked with the flame of blood and launched Ragnar straight to the river. Leo sees this and gets very angry. She confronts Grimwild for hurting Ragnar, threatening to destroy him. She fiercely attacked him, but it was not as easy as the other dragons she killed. And the worst, he wasn't even using all his strength, while Leo was already very exhausted without having managed to cause a single scratch on him. He was by far the strongest dragon she had faced. She then wonders if he is the dragon god himself. And this irritated Grimwild a lot. How could she compare a lower-class dragon with a powerful god? Grimwild attacked her with his flame. But Leo, who was always attentive to the battle, quickly deviated. Grimwild then decided to teach her about the type of dragon he was. He said it was the 10th seat of the blood lineage, which made the dragon superior in a lower degree. He even told him why the kingdom would be destroyed. Leo is shocked to know that their lives depended on the changes in the humor of a dragon god. For the dragons, the attack was not even serious, because the dragon hunters are not a real threat to them. In other words, for them humans they were insignificant like ants. Greenwild starts to laugh and attacks Leo again, and ended up killing her. Ragnar had been rescued from the river and had already woken up, and he saw all this happen in front of him, without being able to do anything. And after that, his whole life changed completely. His heroine had died right in front of him, so it looked like the curse was still there. Greenwild then exterminated all the inhabitants of the city, but Ragnar survived. He was completely crushed, and began to nourish deep hatred for the dragons. He set out on a mission to exterminate all existing dragons. He wanted to avenge himself, so he trained non-stop over the years. He almost died several times, but he remained firm. He made new companions, but everyone ended up dying while he was still alive. He continued to lose people around him, but he never stopped. He had not suffered his whole life just to have turned into a dragon by ultimacia. So he interrupted a ritual, sticking his silver sword in his own chest. This resulted in his death, and Ultimacia was very disappointed, and left with his alliance to do other jobs elsewhere. Soon after that, Crimson, the previous dragon monarch, arrived and revived Ragnar. Crimson left before Ragnar woke up. Ragnar then returned to train even more. But even so, he continued to lose most of his battles. He was not strong enough yet. However, little by little, he began to win all his battles. And he did this for decades and decades, until his silver sword completely merged with his body. This made him begin to emit silver from his own flesh. He surpassed human limits, and became the strongest dragon hunter of all time. Now he was at the same level as the dragon monarchs. He could protect everything and everyone, but there was nothing else to protect, and he felt useless every day. However, Crimson met him soon after. And Ragnar reacted as always. He tried to kill Crimson immediately, but Crimson seemed to have several bodies, and be immortal. It was then that Crimson said he wanted Ragnar to join him, and help him fulfill his desire. And this desire was the same as Ragnar: kill all the dragons. Ragnar was shocked. He could not believe those words. Crimson then revealed that when everything was over, Ragnar would have to kill the last living dragon. Crimson himself, without thinking twice, Ragnar took the chance and began a revolution in the hunt for dragons. However, this was taking a long time, and they wanted it to be faster, so they had an idea to send Ragnar back to the past, and give his current power to his younger self. He appears on the night of the attack, shortly before the death of Leo. Greenwild is still explaining to her how many dragons do humans think are insignificant, and we can see that the young Ragnar is still in the river. The Ragnar of the future then shows him all the devastating memories, including the one in which Leo dies. They have a conversation, and the Ragnar of the future puts his silver sword in the back of the Ragnar of the past, so that all his power is transferred to him, with the goal of saving Leo and all the others. As the power crosses the young Ragnar, he feels an absurd pain that makes him scream very loud, frightening all the hunters of dragons around. At the moment Greenwild tries to attack Leo and hit her, Ragnar wakes up. He instantly freezes all the smaller dragons without any effort, and his behavior has changed completely. He looks much colder now, thanks to his silver aura that is emanating from his body. This completely scares Greenwild, making him stop in the middle of his attack. He compares this aura of fear that he is feeling, that of a dragon monarch, when he sees that she is coming from Ragnar. He tries to go with firmness since Ragnar is only human, so he takes on his dragon form. But Ragnar freezes him instantly, and shatters him instantly. Leo is there, watching this insane power of Ragnar. She is still alive, which makes him very happy. He runs and hugs, and ends up fainting in his arms. The next day, the city is attacked again by another dragon. Ragnar is still sleeping, but Leo leaves immediately to protect people. The forest trees seem infinite and alive, because they continue to attack her and try to attack him too. When Leo sees this, she turns to help him. However, other trees stop her. But before they can attack him, Ragnar wakes up. He immediately freezes all the trees and locates the forest dragon, who is devouring some young girls in the forest. He goes down for the attack without thinking twice. But where is Leo? She follows him, but she can't reach him because he is too fast. When he gets to the dragon, he knocks him down with a kick, and before he devours a young girl, he makes him fly through the forest When he turns to the young girl, he realizes that it is Crimson, the previous dragon monarch, who is disguised as a girl. He thinks that Crimson is there to find him, but Crimson does not understand what is happening and asks who this crazy boy is. But Ragnar, who has the memories of his past, knows that he is Crimson. Leo soon reaches him, and the dragon of the forest goes over the two. Leo positions himself to face the enemy, but Ragnar quickly takes the lead. He puts a silver bomb in the animal's throat, making him explode and destroy the entire forest. Leo is surprised with the power of Ragnar. She even jokes, saying that it will be difficult to reach him now, but Ragnar says to leave him there and leave the country. Leo is shocked. She does not understand why he would say something like that. She refuses to accept and screams with him. She is the leader. It is she who gives the orders. Ragnar is shocked because Leo has always been very strong and determined. It did not matter the situation. He thinks to himself why she cannot accept that this is the best decision until reality and guilt hit hard. Leo is strong and calm. But she is also just a child. She's only 12 years old and has only 2 children. A little pause and we are back. 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 While Ragnar was unconscious, Crimson analyzed his whole body and discovered that he was melted with the silver sword. Ragnar manages to generate that silver aura, called Silverine, and his potential is very absurd. Crimson, who is very clever and always very planner, is secretly very excited to test this new way of killing dragons. In this, he turns to Ragnar, still pretending to be an innocent girl, and suddenly they see some inferior dragons flying around. These dragons are going in the direction of Leo's group, and Ragnar can't let that happen. He takes Crimson and runs in the same direction, asking for orders. Crimson tells him to destroy all the dragons, and Ragnar does exactly that. He already starts kicking one of the dragons, making them all stop. Then he releases his silver, creating several swords around him, and throws everything at once, pounding one of the dragons before the same one can attack him. The dragon freezes, and one of the swords flies towards Crimson, who catches it. He spits it out and realizes that on the outside it has nothing more. But even so, it can freeze a dragon with just one touch, even if it is in the hands of a mid-level hunter. Crimson realizes that Ragnar's power is much beyond what he imagined, and he sees that he has an absurd potential, and that if he could control an army with these swords, he would be the true owner of the dragons. Soon after, Crimson vomits a slime, and he sends him to do the job. The ghost then goes over the dragons, all happy, swallowing everyone and dissolving the general until it turns into a bear. Crimson then decides to reveal his true form, and accepts to join Ragnar, but with one condition. Ragnar has to drink a special poison, which will kill him only if he betrays Crimson. Crimson is a little afraid of Ragnar's power, so he needs to be cautious. Ragnar drinks the poison on the spot without even thinking twice. He barely lets Crimson explain, which surprises him. After that, Crimson sits down and begins to tell Ragnar what the plan is, and all the race of dragons. And after defeating all the dragons, there will be one last one, which is Crimson himself, that Ragnar will also have to end. After Ragnar deals with the dragons, Crimson approaches him and says he wants to see the battle arts of Silverine in action. They see a group, and this group is led by Michael, who is consoling some children, which already gives Crimson a good idea of the situation. He approaches the children and guarantees that now they are safe, because Ragnar, the saver, took care of the dragons that were nearby. He presents Ragnar as a master dragon hunter, someone who has already defeated several superior dragons. Of course this is not true, but no one needs to know that. Lucky for Crimson that they believe in history. And they start to say now that Ragnar is the saver. Michael then kneels down and presents himself, asking for help for the duo. He wants them to defeat a superior dragon that attacked his city. And they were forced to flee from there, when suddenly they were hit by a giant tornado. This tornado was caused by the superior dragon, which is called Disaster, which occupies the third seat of the line of the dragons. Crimson knows this dragon and explains that he uses the wind to hide. Ragnar is already motivated and wants to face the disaster immediately, but Crimson prevents this and still pushes him slightly to the ground. He knows that Ragnar can't move, and tells him to rest for about 3 days. It is clear that Crimson only paralyzes him on purpose, just to prevent Ragnar from interfering in his plans. Crimson then tells the group that Ragnar cannot help them because of his injuries. In the face of this, they end up asking for help from Crimson, but he refuses, even when he offers everything he has, including his swords as payment. Crimson realizes that they are desperate for help, because they feel guilty. They fled the city and left people behind. And now this guilt has hit, and Crimson worsens the situation even more by narrating everything that happened during the escape. Mikhail can't take it anymore and ends up falling from his knees and starts to cry, saying that all that is true, but that he is too weak to do anything, and that if he had the power that Ragnar and Crimson have, he would protect everything and everyone. And that's exactly what Crimson wanted to hear. Malevolent and the way he is, he delivers a sword to Mikhail, telling him that that is the power to defeat the dragons. Mikhail accepts the sword, with the other dragon hunters who are there, totally supporting the idea. Now Crimson has a group of people that she can control in the battle. So she takes everyone back to the city and passes through a magic door that gives in a room full of weapons and exposition, which is the most amazing thing they've ever seen. And what really impresses the most are the bullets, since they are all infused with Ragnar's own Silverine, the Slayer. The slime is also useful to track the movement of the disaster and inform Crimson. He makes a simulation of the current state of the city and shows that the tornado is more active than ever, and with some survivors. Crimson realizes that the disaster is only gaining time because he received orders to be ready in the city. So Crimson elaborates a plan before dawn. He motivates the dragon hunters with a kind of animated speech. This excites everyone, and they leave to find the disaster. Shortly after, Crimson uses a loudspeaker to provoke the disaster and send some insults to the monarch. The disaster gets angry with the fact that Crimson has insulted the last ant, and he gets so furious that he starts chasing them. And that's exactly what Crimson wanted. He starts driving east, while the sun starts to appear very slowly there on the horizon. He accelerates the vehicle, and the disaster continues at their feet. They open fire, quickly weakening the tornado of the disaster, since their ammunition is filled with silver. Shortly after that, they pass under a bridge, making the tornado stop, and suddenly it opens. The disaster is thrown out just when the sun is rising. And Ragnar had put his silver on the bridge, which helped the tornado to open. The disaster gets confused, and before he realizes it, the slime turns into a giant hand and grabs it, and holds it in a gigantic silver arrow. The disaster can't believe it and gets very confused, because everything happened very quickly, and now he was freezing whole because of the arrow, which was being kept in place because of 5 nights. He tries to invoke his wind, but he can't, since the arrow is piercing your heart, and do not let your blood circulate. He also cannot melt the arrow, because his magic is very weak because of it, and the knights hold firmly the arrow while the sun rises. He screams in pain because of the cold of silver that is piercing his chest, and because of the heat of the sun, when suddenly, the floor where the arrow was placed is torn by some force, She falls, leading the disaster and the knights together. The arrow leaves in the middle, and her head is stuck in the chest of the disaster. Now he's free and furious. He tries to take the arrow out of his own chest from the enemy's back. And this is a huge mistake, because Crimson runs over him with the vehicle, breaking all his bones. Then the knights finish the job, and he is burned by the sun. Crimson says that this defeat was the fault of the pride of the disaster. That even though he was provoking, he didn't give everything of himself, because he never thought he would be defeated, and unfortunately, this arrogance was as dangerous as the silver and the sunlight. After the battle, Crimson delivers food, vehicles, and weapons to the hunters and survivors so that they can leave the city. When they are about to leave, Crimson throws a spell so that they forget about him right away. And they turn around and disappear. Michael thanks Ragnar for the victory, and Ragnar praises him and the others for having knocked down the dragon, making them very happy, and the group of dragon hunters leaves. After that, Crimson takes a radio out of his witch hat and hears an announcement that is being broadcast. She says that there is a dragon attack on the border and that all citizens need to evacuate the capital to where it is safe. No one should approach the border, no matter what happens. Ragnar thinks this is a trap, trying to prevent people from fleeing the country and gathering them in the capital. They head to the capital and manage to enter the old district, a place closer to the palace. Crimson then disguises himself as a woman named Veronica and leaves Slime with taking care of Ragnar, who does not support large crowds. He promises to be back in 2 hours and asks Ragnar not to get into trouble. Then he moves away, mixing with the crowd and thinking about the population of the city. Despite the influx of refugees, the number of people on the street is low. His only viable explanation is that they are reducing the number of people without anyone noticing. He finds one of the golem's servants and obtains the latest information. His other servant, Chimera, also arrives and Crimson informs them about his plan to make Ragnar face the ultimatum. He needs them to work together for this to work. Meanwhile, on the outside, Ragnar and Slime find a crowd gathered around a raised lawn. The military officers there remove the lawn and reveal frozen dragons. The dragons then burn. The guys are trying to get out of their way, the security of the capital, out of danger, and their efforts to get stimulating the crowd. But Ragnar knows that this is just a trick and knows exactly who is forcing them to do this. He starts to move away when suddenly passes by the ultimatum disguised as a common citizen. She also notices and turns to ask if he's okay. Immediately Ragnar is alert and anxious to have seen his enemy. He feels like cutting him into pieces at that moment, but Crimson had ordered him not to do anything, even if he could win in the X1. He wants to wait for Crimson and the others, and he knows that Ultimacia has its superior dragons, Nebulin and Borges, who are on guard, protecting her, ready to act if necessary. So he decides to move away. And as soon as they move away, Nebulin appears to check Ultimacia. He immediately distrusts Ragnar, because he looks like a dragon hunter. Ultimacia says that Ragnar is just sick because of the crowd, which is something that he also identifies since he gets sick and vomits too. Ragnar then uses this opportunity to get out of there. Crimson and his servants, on the other hand, analyzed an Ultimacia footage that is in the palace with the king. And time seems to have stopped, but because of that, it doesn't appear in the footage until the moment the king is attacked, and it's crazy. Crimson explains that Ultimacia appears suddenly at that moment because she can't stop Ultimacia, and she can't stop Ultimacia. She needs to choose between stopping or retreating, which is a weak point. If they ambushed her and killed her, she would repulminate time on herself to heal herself, and since she couldn't stop time while doing that, they would continue to kill her again and again, making her return to time every time. This would repeat until she exhausted all her energy, which would mean that she would end up dying at once. The problem is that Nebulin and Borges would interfere, and then Chimera and Golem enter the scene. They need to ensure that Ragnar finishes the job without any interference. Meanwhile, Ragnar is walking around, wondering if he made the right decision. He has a hallucination of Crimson telling him that he did the right thing. But even so, Ragnar thinks that he needs to end Ultimacia immediately, and asks Slime to get in touch with Crimson and warn him that he found the target before leaving. Slime calls Crimson and informs him that Nebulin is there. Ragnar has brought them back to the place where Ultimacia is, and she is helping a child to meet with the parents, and casually asks Nebulin if that family is on the list of those who will disappear. Ragnar hears this, and Nebulin explains that their method makes these people disappear without leaving traces or suffering. Ultimacia is happy to hear this, saying that this is a true salvation. All this disgusts Ragnar, and he goes to them and paralyzes Nebulin quickly with his sword. Ultimacia does not realize immediately, and she only realizes when Nebulin takes off in pieces, all frozen. And that's when she realizes that Ragnar is an enemy. She takes off and tries to stop time, but Ragnar runs to her and cuts her off before that, killing her in action. She makes time go back to herself, but he quickly cuts her into pieces again. And kills again. They repeat this, while Crimson and the others hear the commotion outside. When Ultimacia returns in time again, she tries to counterattack, but Ragnar hits him in the air several times. She uses a blood flame spell to attack him, but he counterattacks with his silver swords that stomp her. Crimson gets angry at the fact that Ragnar started the fight without his permission, but he's curious to see where this will go. Ragnar continues to attack repeatedly, and Ultimacia loses count of how many times she has already died. She begins to fear that her time is running out, and Borges tries to help her. But Golem attacks him before he can do anything. Ragnar continues to attack, but suddenly he is involved in a magic barrier created by Nebulin. Nebulin managed to wake up, but he is in a terrible state. Ultimacia returns in time again and attacks Ragnar using the barrier of a blood dragon. However, Ragnar uses all his silver power to break the barrier of Nebulin. And Nebulin tries to reinforce the barrier, but slime appears next to him and swallows him, allowing Ragnar to free himself. Ultimacia is completely cured and calms down a little. But Ragnar also breaks the barrier of blood, and he attacks immediately. Before she can stop time, but she rebounds quickly while thinking about her first seed dragon, Ultikamui. Meanwhile, Ragnar continues to attack until they are out of the capital. He does not contain himself and releases all his anger on her, crushing her repeatedly until the ground breaks and causes an explosion. Ultimacia then decides to use a trick that Ultikamui taught her to use in such desperate situations. She rebounds the whole world, and this takes them all back to the moment when Ragnar and Slime met in the crowd, around a lawn that covered the frozen dragons. Ragnar gets confused and feels that there is something wrong. Ultimacia appears behind him and makes time stop. She starts talking about the amount of magic needed to go back the whole world. And that's why she doesn't do it often, but she had to do it. Because Ragnar is a threat to her. She then wonders why he hates her so much, to the point of dethroning her several times. She moves people to a safe place, and that leaves her with only Ragnar and Slime. Before she can move Slime, she notices Ragnar's finger movement. What scares her? No one can move without permission when she stops time. The Nebula arrives and attacks Ragnar as revenge, and she sees that Ragnar has not moved again and is being beaten by the Nebula. So she was relieved. She stops the Nebula because she has slime in her hands. That is dissolving the parts of her skin. In addition, hitting Ragnar will not help because he broke all her defenses during the battle. She realizes that his body is like a silver sword in which magic does not work, so they will need to find another way to defeat him. She asks Borges to tell the king to use a powerful beam of light to hit Ragnar. But then Ragnar remembers when Ultimacia injected her blood on him. They're in the future, and that makes him so furious that he ends up waking up. He runs in his direction, but much slower than before. Ultimacia begins to panic because no one can interfere in his domain, and ignites Ragnar with his own blood. She gets scared because her magic is not working, and all those who have their blood can move normally. She just chooses who cannot. And Ragnar, as she already had her blood in the future, he can move too. But she doesn't know that because this is a different timeline, while Ragnar continues to advance in her direction. The Nebula creates a barrier to protect her, but Ragnar crosses as if it were nothing, giving several headshots, so it scares her a lot, and cuts her into pieces. She goes back in time on herself, making time go back to normal, since she can't do both things at the same time, and Ragnar appears again to try to attack her. But the Nebula throws itself in front to try to protect her, but then suddenly Ragnar stops and begins to bleed through his face, and this is the result of the excessive effort he made with his own body to be able to move while the time was stopped. He falls to the ground bleeding a lot, and at that moment the king shoots that beam of light against Ragnar. After the Nebula leaves the area with the ult, and after the explosion, The nebula sees Chimera and Crimson, who is disguised as a woman, and Crimson is right next to Ragnar's body, protecting him. But the Alt and the nebula don't know who they are. Crimson then is very disappointed with Ragnar. Because he lost, he should have followed the orders, but he didn't, and now he is in this state, which is very annoying for Crimson. Despite this, Crimson describes how he has never seen the Alt this way. And he says she is not very focused on combat, that she didn't like to fight very much. But she always had total confidence in her time control. However, now she is shaken and trembling because Ragnar destroyed her confidence in her time ability. Crimson wonders if the Alt would use its magic once again to try to end Ragnar. The Alt was in panic, thinking there was something wrong with his magic, but in the end he decides to use it again to try to stop time. But that's exactly what Crimson wanted. And he detonates several bombs that Golem had placed in the area, killing several people. What distracts the Alt, making it break even more. Since she didn't want to see the suffering of those people, she wanted them to have a quick death, without pain and suffering, and Crimson's plan works very well, since the Alt destroys itself completely and goes into panic, without understanding what is happening. So to change that, she tries to go back in time one more time, but the Golem prevents it, saying that this would end all your magic. So Crimson gets very angry with it, and leaves, taking Ragnar on the back of the Chimera. They return to their globe camera, a teleport room that is connected to several points of the Earth and the Moon. Crimson wants to leave the country and recover, but Ragnar wakes up and refuses to leave. He insists that he will not leave, without first giving away in the ultimate. Crimson tries to calm Ragnar, saying that he did a good job and says that now he needs to rest. But Ragnar does not accept this, and he tries to get up and activates his battle art, Silverine. So Crimson orders the Chimera to heal, and he steps on his head. He complains about the technique, and says that this technique can damage the teleport room. But when we see, it's too late, because in the room there is a small crack on the wall, and the Nebulin, who is outside with a lot of anger about what happened, he awakens a power, and ends up trying to look for Crimson, and this crack was all he needed. Crimson orders the Golem to attack, and the Golem shoots at Nebulin. But Nebulin calls for help, and Borges answers, shooting at the Golem. Meanwhile, Ragnar continues to resist the ties of the Chimera. He manages to let himself go and is determined to destroy all the dragons that are out there. Crimson is completely shocked and very furious with what Ragnar is doing, because basically he is helping the enemy to end their plan. But Ragnar doesn't care. He just gets even stronger. Luckily they manage to escape from that room for an emergency exit, and they end up going to the Stalia military base. Crimson is taken to the commander of the Special Corps of the Royal Army, who is also the second princess of the kingdom. Honestly, Crimson already knows everything about her and hates her. Stalia was born without arms, but has a special power. Her eyes can see the aura emitted by all things. And it is this aura that allows her to move anything, using only the power of the mind. The first thing she managed to control, it was a set of silver cutlery. That's why she got the nickname of Silverware Princess, which is the princess of the cutlery. The Solarians think she is a living miracle, and half the world knows who she is. At the age of 3, Stalia defeated 3 inferior dragons. At the age of 6, she won a combat tournament. And at 8, eliminated an entire horde of dragons. And at 9, prevented a coup d'etat. 10 years later, she became a master, creating incredible silver equipment. And today at 16, Stalia is commander of a military unit formed by powerful fighters, who use the equipment she herself created. The reason why Crimson hates Stalia, it's simple: she can tell if you're lying. And as we know, Crimson is a great liar, so it's basically his natural counter. Stalia begins to question Crimson, while pointing her weapons at him, wanting to know how he got there. Crimson knows that you need to think very carefully before answering, because it is clear that she and her unit want to use the teleport room to flee the country, since the 2 superior dragons are on their side. This means that their goals are the same. Therefore, they must cooperate to escape together. Crimson wants to try to deceive her. Stalia can see the change in aura based on emotions and determine the sincerity of people. So, if he acts with sincerity, mixing a little truth in the lies, he must be able to deceive her. Crimson then decides, reveal your left eye, shocking everyone. He presents himself as Chris Weiss, a magician, Great magicians in this world, sometimes they are born non-human characteristics, and as in Starlia's unit, has a magician, the dragon's eye must convince them. She doesn't want to hide it, since Starlia can kill her at any time if your instinct said to her that she is guilty. So, she gives him a huge sword, making him surprised. She usually gives weapons to the people she likes, and ends up liking her, because she knows that she is a liar. Crimson holds the sword, but she takes it back with hardness at that moment. This was basically a trick that she used, since who touches in her silver sword, she can see your true nature. The true nature of a person. It is the sum of your experiences, lived and Crimson's. It's basically an agglomeration of agony, the despair. She orders that everyone be ready to attack Crimson, and accuses that she is responsible for the explosions in the capital. Crimson tries to explain, but Leslie doesn't give a chance. He turns to Fu, a magician of the unit, and asks for help, but Fu refuses, because they always listen to their commander, regardless of what happens. Leslie then shoots his sword at Crimson, making him scream a fair, but in reality he doesn't care if he's going to hit him, because he's not going to die. Crimson just wants to use this chance to hide at the base, and then fuck with Ragnar. Suddenly, Ragnar appears and intercepts the sword, saying that he is the only one who can kill Crimson, and Leslie is surprised to see him. Ragnar suspects that Crimson has done something, but this time, he says that he is the victim, while the others ask how he got in there. Lassie falls on the floor, screaming, making his unit a little confused. His tutor, Nazarena, helps get up, while she points to Ragnar and calls him sword with arms. Ragnar gets confused and worries that Crimson really have done something, and Crimson asks how Lassie is seeing Ragnar, since she sees the world in a totally different way. She sees him as a sword with a body and starts to go crazy and fall on him. This leaves her unit with a lot of anger, thinking that Ragnar did something to her. They try to attack him, but he detains everyone with ease. Lassie was looking at him, admired, thinking that he is like a perfect fusion of a human with a sword, and he is beautiful, sculpted with perfection, full of scars, and with that aura of Severine that completes everything. He is super powerful, but at the same time so calm, and with the presence so hot. She starts to show shy, and asks Nazarena what to do. Ragnar and Crimson, they are shocked. They didn't expect it, not even from afar. Ragnar tries to talk to her, but she hides behind Nazarena, all embarrassed, half without a way. Ragnar says that he and Crimson, they are not there to fight, and that if Crimson is saved, they will obey your orders. The duo then, it is locked in a cell, while the unit decides what to do with them. In there, Crimson forces Ragnar to kneel and steps in your head for having ruined all the plan. Ragnar doesn't want to the ultimate alive for much longer, and now, both Golem and Chimera, they are gone, and he feels that you need to compensate for all this. Ragnar says that will compensate, giving some good fights in the ultimate, what makes Crimson completely furious. Ragnar wants to return to the capital as soon as he has recovered. This frustrates even more Crimson, so Ragnar asks about the slime, which Crimson had already forgotten. Crimson then finds a drop of the slime on Ragnar's neck, and uses it along the hair thread to try bring the slime back to life. He can, but the slime, now it's much smaller than before. This makes Crimson throw all the blame on Ragnar for another defeat. After Ragnar apologizes, the slime ask where they are, and Ragnar doesn't like the slightest idea. Crimson explains that all that is an underground training place that is in the north of Rise. The people of this place are in danger because of superior dragons that live attacking this city. This makes Ragnar change of idea about go back to the capital and the soldiers meet where Lassie and deliver the report of the situation. The dragons are acting in a strange way. There was no activity, and it seems that they won't attack, even if receiving a signal. Lassie thinks calmly about it and comes to the conclusion that the dragons, they are gone, but no intention of letting them go. Even so, this can still be a good opportunity for them. At ready, Crimson and Ragnar appear. This makes Lassie go and cover the eyes. Crimson then offers they help them with the escape plan. He knows that they want to use the dragon's blood as a source of magic energy to teleport from there. It's a solid plan, but it won't work. The power military of the enemy, it's too big to be compared. But if they join forces, Crimson said that you can provide information about the enemy, and he says that you can also deliver a weapon super capable of defeating superior dragons alone. And this weapon, of course, it's Ragnar. The safer Alessi, it gets super red hearing Ragnar's name, but soon recomposes and refuses his offer to cooperate. Crimson concentrates on one of the superior dragons who are attacking Zora, and he says that Zora, who manages and leads military matters, his power is chemical synthesis. He creates poisons using his own blood, and with that can eliminate or even hypnotize his targets. He spreads these poisons in the form of fog covering a huge area. Fortunately, these poisons can be neutralized by the sunlight or by Silverine disinformation. It can be the differential for them to be able to fight against him, even with his army getting much stronger because of poisons and hypnosis. Alessi, the unit, they distrust disinformation. Crimson remembers that if she was lying, Alessi would know. So he sends Ragnar try to convince her, saying she likes him. Ragnar is not sure if he will succeed, but he tries because he wants people to help that place back to the cell. Crimson tells him that he calculated that at least 10,000 dragons, together with the 13th seat, led by Zora and Teretka, will attack the base. Only has 1,800 between officers and civilians, which means that everyone will die. Crimson asks for him to forget the ultimatum for now, just for them to be able to escape from the country. She will use everything she has, including Ragnar, to ensure that everyone can escape. Ragnar then convinces Alessi that despite Crimson being a terrible trash, there is nothing more that he wants than killing all the dragons. And that's why Ragnar joined him. And as the best dragon hunter in the world, he wants Alessi to use him because he can help her. Alessi is very happy to hear this from his first love, but keep the professional posture and agrees to work with him. Crimson is satisfied with this and wants to adjust based on the information he has. Alessi does not call Crimson, she just wants the information that he provides, and the rest she herself will do. Crimson agrees, taking the sorrow from her face, and advises not to do bullshit. He then informs her that the dragons they stopped suddenly to act because he and Ragnar fought against Ultimatum in the capital. Probably that's why they ran. Though the other Hamui to find him at the base. Ragnar's is power tested. He infuses a sword with Silverine and Isaac attests cutting one of the swords. Alessi, he successfully cuts half of the sword, leaving everyone impressed. Ragnar explains that the effect it will not last because the swords deteriorate over time, but his Alessi's swords are of high quality. There is no reason for concern. Alessi then decides to infuse all the weapons with Silverine from Ragnar in the teleport room of the base. Fu and his team, they are having difficulty with the magic circles and how much magic they need. They are needing more or less 15 blood from dragons inferior to transport only one person. Even they kill all the dragons that will attack the blood, the dragon will not be enough for all people. They need do more experiments, but there is no time. Crimson then appears and offers to give a little hand. Fu does not trust him, but it ends that he does not refuse Crimson's help. While Alessi talks with Ragnar, in particular, she delivers 3 swords that are already available because there is no time to make a special for him. She then says that after the battle want to join to the Solarians and become a dragon scourge. She knows that she will not be able of more than 1,000 people when everyone flee from the country, but if she joins to the Solarians, she will be able to protect her people. But even so, she can die in battle, and when that happens, she wants Ragnar join the Solarians in her place and help her people. She implores for him, but unfortunately, Ragnar refuses because she does not like religion. He tells her that she should not act as if her death was predestined. But she explains that her intuition tells her that since the beginning of the war, she is fated to die. She then becomes assertive and highlights that Ragnar asked her to use. This makes her subordinate. And as his subordinate, he must obey your orders. And that leaves Ragnar impressed. He never thinks in dying during his battles. And when that happens, he thinks that everything is fine for other reasons. He is fully prepared for the worst, which makes her even more capable than him. Your willpower is so incredible that shines, making him remember Leo. These are the people that he always wanted to survive. He then decides transfer your power to the 3 swords and tells Les to become a great dragon hunter because he will protect her. The sun begins to set and the unit waits the arrival of the enemy. The sun then sets and Zora appears and begins to attack the base with roots that look like tentacles. He broke the barriers that Alessi had placed, but the base will be able to resist him. However, at this exact moment, Terrestra arrives by the sky and immediately sparks towards the base. When Alessi sees this, she remembers a tip that Crimson gave him to neutralize this attack. The impact causes few damages, and Terrestra is thrown, choking with Zora. Terrestra says that was counterattacked when he was about to collide with the base, intensifying the shock. Ragnar was counterattacked, so a distance where Terrestra holding two swords filled Severine that shine. Dora thinks that can be safer, but Terrestra says that Severine coming hung and is body and how they achieve maturity. She says that those talented achieve maturity more quickly and Terrestra and years, which means that doesn't have that until he knows that, but rewards power obtained when he was human. Working for Ragnar exploding, but doesn't matter how Ragnar remains intact. Ragnar drops one of his swords and takes one of his mouths to infuse and sword. Then begins to immense quantity of power, and Terrestra prepares to use all his strength and say will in between him and Ragnar. Ragnar uses attack of her dragon, while Terrestra uses seismic convulsion attacks shock, causing a huge explosion of fire and silver. The situation stays silent for and Zora begins to worry about Terrestra, but becomes relieved when he hears voice after Terrestra. Then Ragnar lying unconscious, while Sly his eyes to and but hand. Dora still worries with the possibility of Ragnar being safer, but Terrestra sure that was I would know, so I can lost and right. Terrestra almost smashing Ragnar's foot, while Slime keeps trying to awaken. Ragnar then wakes time to dodge. Surprising. Terrestra and Zora also basically survived by transferring consciousness body to sword. Otherwise, he would have died. Terrestra and Paul sound inferior dragons deal with Ragnar because more that too, and Ragnar defends frustrated. Dragon looking at him with disgrace, spanked and exhausted blood, but still wants with Terrestra leaving. Ragnar to prevent because I should be talking about their strong points. Terrestra knows already talked enough for him understand that Ragnar stronger would one at his sword could resist power. After that, Dora instructs Terrestra to go to the location and explode his cannon. Ragnar doesn't give up trying to hold, but lower dragons are unfinished. They are exhausted because of previous. However, I don't stop arriving, but luckily Shane is arriving, and still represents for having defeated by lower dragons. Carmen also appears, making Ragnar like why are they not defending the base, but dragons then attack the trio and count quickly, while Carmen explains most entries. Base and suddenly slips while the dragon and falls. Shen uses powerful move and eliminates several dragons to Ragnar screams that everyone has duty to defeat the biggest number of dragons to escape, and that Ragnar wants to do that. Shen and others can hide at base, but Shen doesn't have chance to protest. Attacks our front, forcing and to defend. Ragnar prepared, so he doesn't own performance, and after 70 Shen ends winning his first, almost cutting Ragnar shocked, and Shen comes from calm and a moment slime was transferred right now to Shin's head. Had escaped and we start walking to find and wave while that Alessi Mount Aola using part of Vario. Alessi affected dark forest for Zora to gain an advantage but she confident that can simply transform the forest territory thanks can do that because magic circle almost all need to continue defeating dragons and surviving until can teleport. Unfortunately, Zora discovered plan and know that are trying to transport using magic of dragons. Alessi frustrated orders her squadron be aware of any normal in the forest and immediately. But before she can and speaking suffer a pole coming on aloud but she can block her with a barrier. Many experienced low and medium begin to use specific superior subordinates. This means that these dragons are strong, superior, and more 40 of them. Alessi tries to control the situation hides his squadron on how fight, but all this becomes a challenge. While this happens, Alessi witness how the dragons absorbed by the teleportation. Absorption seems 2 kilometers with which supposedly for country and development. Alessi asks who more could be involved and reminds the nebula saw a woman next to Rangus the other day share they powerful barrier and that may be involved and this however the user confident but worries a little where the things that can bring the possibility of a defeat can happen but all that does matter since capture unless maybe there the possibility of losing hope and teleport on her own to avoid this needs to control of magic circle base while that Isaac having difficulty defend the base since his soldiers found why suddenly eliminated and then say happened a little confused but knows that dragon that are facing the responsible arrived suddenly barrier was deactivated leaving several soldiers dead so begins to approach what leads Isaac to order that his squadron recurs while rifle cover a mature dragon that can use magic and crimson said ones that the ultimate can control time so there mature dragon with ability Isaac get ready to fight while rifle fire against the dragon but stop time and releases powerful explosion energy that hits more soldiers drop Isaac doesn't know what to do and block a attack out of reality however motivates his swords and towards a dragon maybe has weak a limit to use his temporalizing whatever needs to while time normal the dragon hits with another energy but defense and hits his shoulder jumps back and the dragon tries to time again but crimson arrives making confused with ultimacy crimson throws the on confusing even more sure must take the ball then for time that activates making it explode like flashbang emits of solo light you know solo light a weakness of dragons then begins to run and scream thing until that normally would for a fraction of seconds only activated time stopped that takes much more time and the dragon is getting confused pain that prevents from doing anything other besides burning. Suddenly someone says and Isaac doesn't recognize voice means to and crimson reveals that 500 citizens recruited by desperate to fight, so Crimson gave weapons and hypnotized Isaac twice against this, so Crimson hypnotizes his squadron also. Discovered Zora now knows about the plan and sabotaging needed to create a reserve plan so will make civilians hypnotized fight against zombies. This will reduce the number of people and effect. Suddenly I feel that the 13th seat of the mind trying to drop a wall of the transport will is barriers everywhere. What frustrates makes scream the scream disturbs that near trying to sleep the 13th seat bangs to be taken to the magic circle and exchange peaceful and full, but Phil releases that a human and defeats dragon and absorbs feels satisfied but suddenly group begins saying that lost control everything happens and impressed foes now interests unit and wants their the minimum damage possible at moment so Zora's appear and invade area but hypnotized react fast crimson everyone away from their black forest battle continues Alesha and are being overloaded dragons that men are playing with air force and defeating them Alesha and sends some soldiers to break the dragons and attack but dragons blaze directly and Alesha and but that she expect Zora already that would fail anyway because she was an disadvantage of like experience battles at large scale. She was trying command defense and attack at the same time without realizing this exhausting. The game's party ended but Territory knows that right now Crimson and are going Zora already lost the army but still believe can win increase number of allies. Meanwhile Ragnar and others can't get closer to territory because small dragons keep appearing without stopping. They are exhausted without time to breathe. Ragnar seems dying but still standing, running forward, cutting dragons without stopping. Not returning for nothing. There's motive Shen and Arf to continue a same rhythm, but then we see Ragnar feeling an absurd pain being breathing right. Cold and just want to stop but knows that can't because protect everyone alone. But Shen told about staying banking hero and really best with but same time technique of safe. Zora realizes calculated and Ragnar persistent but starts having a strange feeling like getting more desperate and then we say Ragnar learned a lot about drugs or silvery way that she was created to resist magic so she hot and freezes all magic no matter what happens the dragons approach Ragnar used second before I arrived to refine the maximum ability of freezing and now they are even more powerful of my power and experience of our future. All they need to use his imagination and let the sword. While he swallows time, then flows and eliminates dragons once without the sword even touches them. While that territory irritated Zora is worried about Ragnar's persistence. That this may motivate the others too, but Zora thinks that it doesn't matter because Alesha is almost dead. She's on the ground, unable to move. Some dragons try to attack her, but one of the soldiers, named Christopher, comes to his rescue. Alesha tells him to go to the northwest, so he takes her and goes up to the northwest. We see that Alesha had asked for help from Crimson to locate Zora. And Crimson thought that this was dangerous, but even so, he estimated that Zora was 1 km away from the base. With this information, Alesha deduced that Teratra dragged Ragnar away from Zora's location. Crimson also told her that Zora can make eyes grow around him to see up to about 2 km away, so he must be located in some area that gives him a broad view of the base. Alesha then bends her senses in that direction to restrict the area and manages to find Zora. Zora realizes that he was located and releases gas to try to deter Alesha, but then Nazarena appears behind him and launches a surprise attack, tearing off his head and heart from his body. Unfortunately, Zora's body is still standing, and Nazarena realizes that it is a farce and decides to leave, leaving the rest to Alesha. Alesha thanks Nazarena for helping her and, finding out that the true Zora is still alive, is actually 100 meters deep, she begins to manipulate the ground to pull him out, using all her strength. She orders Christopher to throw a sword at him, and Zora begins to panic and asks Terpukau to bomb the forest with his cannons. At this moment, Ragnar and the others see Terpukau, and he also sees them. He points his cannons at him and starts shooting. Soon after, he introduces himself to Zora, who examines the area. He finds Alessia, who was hit and is on the ground. He manifests a body in front of her and praises both her efforts and the efforts of her unity. Before that, Crimson was talking about Princess Lakuja, a heroine known for having carried out many military feats and made the Solarians consider her a real miracle. Later, she became the true flagellus of the dragons. Many people believe that Alessia is her reincarnation. Zora worked for Lakuja when he was still human, and even after becoming a dragon, he kept his memories, and because of that, Crimson encouraged Alessia to continue fighting, because she would remind Zora of Lakuja, and that would drive him crazy. Zora asks Alessia to join the Wind lineage, because he doesn't want her to die. He even suggests that her own soldiers also want that. She wakes up and realizes that Zora is starting to compare her to Lakuja, and she reveals to him that she can control Silverine, and since he was created to resist magic, she can control precisely this resistance at will. And she may not even be paid to him as a general, but when it comes to the will and the resistance in the magical field, she is better. She conjures several barriers and invokes a great spear that pierces Zora, holding him in a tree. Zora freezes, but still develops a mouth on his forehead to keep talking. He says he doesn't want to waste time and will quickly poison Alessia, but two soldiers appear and take her away. They prefer to kill her. Christopher also arrives and pulls Zora's spear, causing him to shatter. Alessia communicates telepathically with her unit to motivate them to continue fighting. They need to gather all their willpower to fight, and she will use this willpower to channel it into the spear. She manages to concentrate everything successfully, and orders Christopher to launch against Terpukau. Zora tries to warn him of the danger that is approaching, and he quickly counterattacks him. The two attacks collide, creating a huge explosion of fire and silver. However, the spear cuts the cannon, and as the willpower of the soldiers increases, the spear pierces it even more. Zora emerges from the ground like a monster, tries to attack Alessia, who is saved by Nazarena. At this moment, the spear crosses Terpukau, and Ragnar, who was there, catches her. He sinks with his hand to explode a large amount of silver in Terpukau. Terpukau prepares to use the cannon, but it is too late. After that, Ragnar falls, and Slime praises him, but he worries about the fact that Terpukau had exploded when he was about to be swallowed by the silver. So he asks Slime to take him to where the smell of Terpukau is, so he can finish the job. Zora, in return, panics and begins to call for Terpukau, fearing that he has died. Terpukau responds that he is about to die, but wants to end the enemy in the process, so Zora, unfortunately, orders him to explode and make his death worth it. They put a plan into practice, and Zora moves away from the area. Terpukau concentrates all his power in the final movement, causing a huge explosion. Luckily, Ragnar arrives on time and stops the explosion with a huge amount of silver. At a distance, we can see Ragnar containing the explosion, and if he fails, everyone will die. Ragnar continues to expel his silver, but the explosion pushes him back. He wants to increase his power, but his sword will break into pieces if he does that. Alessia realizes and understands that the problem is in his sword. She feels defeated, but she doesn't want to give up so easily. So she leaves her body and consciously goes to support Ragnar. She puts her hand on his to strengthen the sword and make it last a little longer. She asks Ragnar to use every gram of his strength. Ragnar feels the support of her hand, which makes him also feel the heat of the determination of her team, and together they concentrate on the fight. They use their powers, increasing the area of the surface of the silver and freezing a large part of the explosion. By chance, the explosion involves the silver and burns it even more, directing only to the two. Ragnar reveals that he has a letter in his sleeve. He and Alessia release the sword. And when Ragnar reveals that he has a sword inside him, Alessia helps him release this power. And somehow she ends up seeing the memories of her future self, lonely and sad. And she gets very excited about Ragnar uses his silver battle arts to help liberate his power completely. Ragnar then reflects on how he should hunt all the dragons on his own, or else he will be weak and dependent on others. But now he feels a fire burning in his heart, which means a new hope. He punches the sword, releasing all the power in the explosion, and beyond. Zora is at a distance, witnessing all this and is speechless, unable to say anything. The explosion completely froze everything around her, and Ragnar is in front of her, with Alessi impressed right behind. Alessi remembers the Ragnar of the future and starts to cry, but in fact, she is angry because he was so powerful and beautiful, but still ends up alone in the future. This is unbelievable to her, which makes her cry even more. Ragnar is moved by this and thanks her for knowing his future self. She also thanks him for having helped her and his unit to achieve this victory. In addition, she thinks that his last attack was very cool. After that, he asks her to abandon Crimson and stay with her. She will not allow him to have such a miserable future, and he can even think about it, but she makes it clear that she will not accept a no as an answer. In this, she leaves and returns to her body, ready to find him after the teleport. Ragnar is there, standing amazed at her. He thanks her again for surviving with him, since in the end they ended up saving each other. Alessia wakes up in her body and soon after the magic of teleportation is activated. Everyone is happy and relieved for everything to have worked out, but this is interrupted when Alessia loses her head. Literally, because of the fast attack of the old Kamui. So he puts his head back in place and goes after Ragnar, forcing him to fight. He still knocks Slime down in the process, and before Slime can do anything, Ragnar is already at his limit. And now what's left is his true value. He needs to extract this from him to continue fighting, because now he's in the final boss. Back to the capital, Nebulin starts to worry because the old Kamui has left. Ultimacia says he went to join the fight. According to her, there is no reason to worry, since he would not lose to an enemy as weak as Ragnar. The old Kamui and Ragnar then begin their battle, and before that, Crimson had told Ragnar about the monarch, with claws, who does not share his blood with her followers. Instead, he gives weapons to them, and the old Kamui stole one of those claws. And because of that, Ragnar should not fight the old Kamui. But he ended up forgetting that, so he continues to fight. And he is extremely fast. He attacks several times without leaving any openings, forcing Ragnar to stay on the defensive. Even so, Ragnar remains firm and resists attacks. He hits the old Kamui, which cuts his head, but instantly regenerates and counterattacks, throwing Ragnar to the ground. Still on top, he hits Ragnar with an electric shock, throwing him against the ground at an absurd speed. Ragnar gets up and uses his sword to return the blow, but the old Kamui breaks the sword and kicks him on the ground again, and before he can get up, the old Kamui attacks again. Luckily, Ragnar blocks in time and counterattacks. The old Kamui falls back and Ragnar concentrates Silverine in his hand to cut him with her when he approaches. He pulls another sword and throws it at the old Kamui, but she breaks with impact. And when he grabs her, after that, Ragnar is already on the ground, unable to move. He hears Alessia's voice and wakes up in an abandoned place. When he sees Alessia, he runs to her and holds her by the shoulders, shouting her name several times. He can't believe she's alive, and she can't believe he's so close to her. She moves him away, but asks him to call her by her last name, Delia. Ragnar then obeys, leaving her all weak. After that, he is surprised by the fact that the teleport worked, and asks about the others. She takes him to them, but suddenly stops, saying that she is not going any further. She has to take care of other things, such as forging a sword that she always wanted to forge. It is not yet clear how she will do this, because the details are very nebulous. All she knows is that it is a sword of the Silver Comet. A silver comet passes through the sky, while she explains how it also passed for a long time and became the origin of all silver. She wants to create a sword worthy of Ragnar, and suddenly the ground breaks, and while Ragnar falls, she wants to see him again. He screams for her and wakes up, revealing that everything was not a dream. He still manages to feel her, which leaves him relieved. He looks around and sees that he is on the roof, with some soldiers sleeping in a tent. He goes out and discovers that he is in the same abandoned place as his dream. Slime is also there, trying to make the soldiers stop being depressed with the loss. Ragnar approaches them, making Slime happy to see him. Isaac appears and takes him to see the Solarians. They were the ones who tried to cure him, even if it was difficult because of the reaction of Silverine to the magic. Ragnar is shocked to see that the Carulus look like the Ultimacia. His reaction is to kill one of them immediately, but Isaac reveals that they are working for a Solarian church. The Carulus still need to explain why they all look like the Ultimacia. The strongest dragon hunters belong to a group called Dragon Scourge. a group of elite hunters created by the Solarian Church, who worshipped the sun god. And each member had a saint title. And one of these saints was Kyla, who had the power to control and manipulate time. Her ability was so unique that the church decided to create an army of her clones after she died. Kyla's clones were used as healers and even revived the soldiers who were fighting the dragons. However, these clones were not perfect. Each clone could only survive an average of 4 years, because their useful life was reduced every time they used the magic of time. The clones had only a fraction of Kyla's power, with some exceptions. And clone 19,835 was one of these exceptions. All other clones were like an empty shell without substance, concentrated only on their duty. However, this clone was different. She had emotions, which allowed her not only to but also had a bigger useful life. Original she worked as Kyla, leader in one of the front lines of the church. One day, however, Kyla committed the greatest sin imaginable. She killed a young dragon who would terrorize the church 8 years later. Even the sun god appeared to punish her for this great sin. All the Kylas made after her were destroyed, and she was considered a traitor and was executed. When suddenly the time stopped, a child version of Kyla appeared, asking her to become her servant. This was the dragon god, which had no real physical form, but it was shaped according to the will of its faithful. Kyla did not want to die, she wanted to be saved, and so she agreed to become the servant of the dragon god. The dragon god did not only grant her the dragon's blood, but also gave her the position of dragon monarch, whose power is only under the dragon god himself, and he also gave her a new name, Ultimacia. Later she became the leader of the group of 13 dragon monarchs, called Blood of the Wind. They began to cause pure chaos, killing humans because the dragon god so ordered, and it all started because this god loved confectionery. In a little town in the kingdom, and this confectionery was protected against the attacks of dragons. Unfortunately, it was stolen and ended up closing the doors. Since then, the dragon god has been sad and made a bitch like a child, and decided to destroy the whole kingdom because of that. After all this explanation about the reason of his actions, Carola asks Ragnar to become a dragon's flagellum, to help the refugees. He refuses, even when they promise good benefits. So they also refuse to help the refugees, because Alessi could not become a dragon's flagellum. And Ragnar will not take her place. Ragnar then sees a glimpse of light coming from one of the abandoned buildings. It is the chimera that is signaling that he goes to her. He asks leader Carola why the church did not help them, and Carola replies that they can only do this with those who are capable of becoming dragon's flagellum, and as a person must first prove that it is a miracle of God. Alessi could not do that, but Ragnar did, and that was the divine will. Ragnar gets angry and punches the table, and says if God is so good because he does not go down personally to kill the dragons, he orders them to welcome the refugees, and in return he will defeat Ultimacia. He takes the slime and goes to meet Crimson. In the abandoned building, Crimson completely cures in the globe chamber, and she is now fixed because she has the ability to self-repair. Otherwise Crimson would never forgive. In addition, he had nothing to do in the last 2 days, so he fixed and reconnected the globe to its base on the moon. Everyone goes there and Ragnar reveals that Alessi is still alive. Crimson believes that her head was cut, which means she's dead. But Ragnar explains that at the end of the battle he and Alessi connected deeply through his auras, and he still feels this connection. And more, the other Kamui put her head back in place as soon as he cut it, and she was trapped like a magnet. In addition, he took her body with him, which was not necessary. He could only have taken the head. However, this proves nothing to Crimson, and Ragnar interrupts, wishing he could have told the soldiers that Alessi was still alive, and that he still wants to see her again. So he asks for Crimson's help, because the battle is not over yet. But Crimson does not want to act on the basis of something unsafe. Even though Ragnar has a strong conviction of this, they cannot defeat the dragons now, because they have the control of the magic of time and the old Kamui by their side. They need a surprise element to win. Only the control of time, and they do not have. Ragnar offers himself to deal with the old Kamui, while Crimson deals with the ult. But Crimson needs time to prepare for this, and there is no advantage in fighting now. Ragnar believes that Alessi is beneficial enough. She is an incredible person, and they need her to destroy the dragons. Crimson is incredulous because he thought Ragnar was on his side and not Alessi's. They made a promise, and he cannot afford to lose him now. Ragnar guarantees him that he will not die, because he never dies. But Crimson thinks this is due to pure luck, which is laughable for Ragnar, because if it is the case, then he will stop counting on luck. All the memories he had with the unit start to appear in his mind, making him finally understand why he wants to fight. He wants to save everyone so that everyone can laugh together again. And he will not ask for more help from Crimson, but he will ask him to open the door again for him to return to Earth. Crimson realizes that he made a mistake and realizes that Ragnar is no longer a nobody with the immense power he can control, and there is nothing else he can do about it. He invokes the door, but warns that Ragnar will regret it. When Ragnar is about to leave, suddenly he feels stupid and falls to the ground. It's the poison he took when they met. He was made to act exactly in moments like this. When Ragnar is trying to leave Crimson, Crimson is disappointed with him, calling him a useless tool. But he says he can recreate his art using another person. He can simply move his brain too, and turn him into a zombie, and that would be funny. Unfortunately for Crimson, Ragnar wakes up at the same moment, and he is surprised because he is still alive, because Crimson said he would have a painful death. Crimson denies, and says he doesn't understand why Ragnar is alive. He used specifically nanomachines, genetic destroyer, moved by IA. Even if Ragnar is half sword, he should be at least half dead. Crimson gets angry, but Ragnar gives him a slap on the head for him to calm down. But Crimson ends up being thrown into the air. He admits he feels bad for breaking his promise, but Crimson's words don't move him a bit. Chimera tries to attack him, but he quickly holds her. He remembers that when he met Crimson for the first time in the future, he killed her and didn't see her heart, and he wants to know where this heart is, because probably this is the reason why his words don't have emotion. The Aya was able to move him several times because they put their lives at risk. Crimson has no chance because he's just trailing all the time. In addition, his chances of victory can even be low, but they are not null. If Crimson can't accept the challenge now, how will he end up with all the dragon lines? Crimson is speechless, and Chimera transforms and tries to attack Ragnar again, but Crimson prevents Chimera and tells Ragnar to do what he wants. He leaves and Crimson goes to sleep. Ragnar returns to the camp and finds the soldiers feeling much better. They found out that Alessia is still alive, and that's because Christopher's silver prosthetic arm can only move through her silver manipulation. And he's still moving, so they want to go rescue her. And Ragnar goes with them. Meanwhile, Alessia is without Kamui in the capital. She is still alive, and when she wakes up she gets a little confused. Out Kamui explains that the head reconnects when you put her back in the body, right after the cut. But Alessia has a poison mark on her neck that will be activated to see if Ragnar and her unit come to rescue her. The mark was left by Zora, who is a little angry for having lost his partner. Suddenly Out Kamui begins to freeze, and it spreads quickly through his body. And this is happening since his fight because of Ragnar. And this is another reason for which he is keeping Alessia stuck, since he wants to fight Ragnar again, but in his best form, and he knows that for that he needs Alessia. Alessia then remembers that she will die if Ragnar gets close to her, that she needs to forge a weapon capable of resisting his claws. Meanwhile, Crimson is lying in bed, a little depressed. He checks the situation of the capital via satellite, and realizes that the dragons seem to be in a hurry, and begins to speculate that all this can only be because of Ultimacia, who cannot use his time control magic. This makes it the perfect time to attack. So he gathers his servants and gets ready. He decides to go to battle, along with Ragnar and Alessia's unit. Ragnar and the unit leave with the help of Fu, so they appear in the capital. And Alessia's neck mark is activated, and she begins to suffocate, and so the other chemist knows that the enemy has arrived. The soldiers begin to descend, and realize that the sun is not rising because of the Nebulan barrier. Borges also realizes his arrival, and begins to attack. The other chemist waits for Ragnar, and the soldiers tell Ragnar to go to him, and he goes. Nebulan feels another presence approaching, but he cannot identify who it is. But it is Crimson, who is using his teleportation room, floating above the barrier. He realizes that the dragons did not stop time, even if this was their greatest advantage. This confirms that they really cannot stop time. So he implants the giant robot of the golem through a space connection. Nebulan panics, because he did not expect any interference, and asks Borges to intercept the machine. Ragnar also realizes that Crimson arrived, as he expected, while going in the direction of the golem, just to see Alessia on the verge of death, with the other Camus waiting for him. He runs to her, and the other chemist decides to move away and say goodbye. Ragnar takes Alessia in his arms and sees the terrible state she is in while the poison runs through her whole body. He came to get her as promised. But what could he do to someone who is dying? If he tries to freeze the poison, he will end up freezing her whole. Maybe the Solarians or Crimson can help. But there is no time. Ragnar takes the sword she made for him, and he takes the sword and remembers the silver comet of the dream. She apologizes for not being able to make a better sword than that. That's why she feels she didn't keep her promise. She regrets not being good enough. Because Ragnar will not be able to win the grip of the chemist with that sword, and she tortures hard and cries when she sees her end coming. Alessia says she will forge a powerful sword worthy of Ragnar next time. Ragnar gets anxious and agitated. He wants the two to survive and can laugh together. He wants her to watch while he fights. He promises to win using that sword and end the old Camus. Even if she can't see him, he will shine so much that she will not have a choice unless she sees him clearly. Nazarena arrives and takes Alessia in her leaving arms, Ragnar free to start the way to the old Camus. If Alessia dies, Ragnar will be sad, but she will also be grateful to have met her. That's why she should be attentive until the end, because from that moment he will be stronger than her future self. The old Camus then descends, and Ragnar demands that he turn into a dragon, but he wants to continue from where they stopped, and show the claw to him. The claw can change its characteristics, according to the user, so she becomes a lightning claw. When he grabbed, she expands and transforms at the speed of light, getting gigantic. She releases waves of electric shock, so big that it destroys even the ground. But Ragnar doesn't care about that. He just wants the old Camus to turn into a dragon. The old Camus then launches an attack against him, and Ragnar instantly freezes everything, including his arm, using only one hand. Then he attacks quickly, and cuts the old Camus in half, which makes the old Camus very excited. Ragnar then puts the sword on his back, and she begins to shine intensely. He wants the old Camus to transform in its most powerful version, so that he can crush him at the peak of strength. The sword shines even more on his back, making Ragnar float a little above the ground, as if he were a god. The old Camus finds this very funny. While he regenerates, he begins to compare his weapons, and his claw reaches 100% in the user's hands. But Ragnar's sword takes the user to 120%. He finally gets serious and turns into a dragon. He attacks him, and Ragnar blocks using only his hands, which releases a huge amount of silverine. This creates a gigantic mess around them, taking Nazarena to take Alessia from there. Ragnar sees them and sends them a sword to help them to push themselves faster. Then he returns to focus on his enemy and attacks for a body-to-body combat, hitting him with more silverine, which pushes him back a little. He continues to attack, and old Camus counterattacks with his claw, causing a great fight between the two. Old Camus sees an opening and hits Ragnar with his tail, throwing him on the ground. Then he expands the claw to pierce him at a distance, but Ragnar dodges and gets up. Old Camus runs to him, but Ragnar blocks him, and they continue like this for a while, until old Camus gains advantage. He slashes himself behind Ragnar and shoots at him. Fortunately, the sword activates one of Alessia's barriers to block the attack. However, old Camus still manages to throw and hold Ragnar on the ground using his claw. Ragnar tries to freeze the claw while old Camus prepares to blow him up with an absurd energy ball. He frees himself from the claw in time and blocks the attack with one of his hands, and he turns the other into a blade that cuts the attack in half, reaching old Camus, and he takes him to the sky and cuts his arm. Old Camus then decides to counterattack before regenerating, but Ragnar defends himself, and they continue like this while Nazarena observes from the ground with Alessia in his arms. She is admiring Ragnar's light and telling this to Alessia. Alessia tells her to stop wasting time with someone who is about to die and sends her away. Nazarena is worried, but realizes that Alessia is no longer responding. She leaves while saying goodbye, leaving Alessia's body there. Meanwhile, Nebulin begins to feel the presence of Crimson. He put the ultimate in an alternative space, and is worried that Crimson is there to take control of this space. Crimson then begins to launch the spell and breaks all the barriers of Nebulin. Nebulin begins to panic, because Crimson is very fast. He is undoing all his efforts in a few seconds, but Nebulin is motivated to do better. He works hard to protect the barrier and frustrate Crimson's efforts. Unfortunately for him, the slime appears and swallows. Crimson finally manages to break all the barriers and reaches the alternative space. He calmly walks towards the ultimate which is turned to the other side and points a weapon at her. But before shooting, Nebulin shouts her name to warn her. The Ultimate gets scared and looks to see Crimson shooting at her shoulder. She uses her blood to create a fire and shoot him against him. He dodges and lands on a different platform. He accesses the space system and manipulates it to lock the two inside and change the speed of time. He wants no one to enter and does not want the Ultimate to use its magic out of space. She realizes that suffering is not healing and remembers what old Camus said. To get angry in this kind of situation. Then she gets furious and turns into her dragon form. Before that, Crimson went to get her heart, which had been hidden. His monarch version appears, and they end up having a discussion there. Is it really worth it for Crimson to get the heart? Other people of him also appeared, and none understood the reason why he was doing this. But he had already decided that it was worth risking his life for Ragnar. Then he recovers, and returns the heart to its place, making the monarch merge with him. And now he can release his true power. In the Ultimate, she hits him with an energy beam explosion. But Crimson dodges, and uses his flashbangs. As the time is slow in this space, the balls just blink a little, making the Ultimate protect itself behind a shield. Crimson shoots at her, but the bullets tickle the shield. She uses her syrup to hit him, but he dodges, and tells how he created the bullets to kill her. They interrupt the blood flow, and make the magic useless. As he is the Ultimate, they use the time control. Their blood flow is similar, which means that the bullets would work on him too. All he needs to do is hit her heart, and she dies. He shoots another bullet that accelerates 50 times, while the flashbangs light up a little again. This makes her tremble in pain, and the bullet hits his wing, breaking the shield in the process. This is also the fall of the platform, and creates a broken killer with Crimson behind him. He accelerates another bullet while she shrinks, and releases a tremendous explosion of energy with Meanwhile, fear. The battle continues in another place. Christophe and Fu eliminate Zora, but before he leaves, he uses his secret weapon to kill them too. Isaac goes to him and quickly freezes him. And Crimson continues his battle with the Ultimate and realizes that the explosions of her energy are absurd. She can be the weakest monarch of all, but has a huge amount of magic reserved. She can dominate most of the dragons, only attacking intensely randomly, which is what she is doing with Crimson now, which makes it too difficult for him to approach her. So he decides to use his psychic attack to make the space silent, and expand his voice and torture her. He thinks she is nothing like Karila, and that's why she's trying to become a monster and get away from her. She is just a clone. And that makes her alarmed, especially when Crimson also insults the dragon god. He literally made her destroy a country because of a cake shop. And that's extremely ridiculous. He describes the situation in the same way he sees her, a young Karla who looks like her, and with the sisters who died because of her. The Ultimate Ant then begins to panic, and reflects on her actions in the past, about how she wanted to be kind, and did not want to choose who to save, because she wanted to save herself. Meanwhile, Borges gets furious with the death of Nebulin, and goes to the room where slime is still consuming her. He destroys her along with the building, leaving behind the skeleton of Nebulin. He gets scared, but he remembers that there is something more important to concentrate on now, which is to protect the Ultimate. After complaining to Nebulin, he manages to break the walls of the alternative space, and he does it well in time. When Crimson is almost shooting at the Ultimate, that is crying in fear, he calls her so she can escape through the hole he made on the wall. The Ultimate tries to escape, but Crimson chases her. She tries to explode him with more energy shots, but he dodges all of them and continues to chase her. On the outside, we see the Chimera, that unfortunately was killed, but Snake, her tail, is still alive. He changes places with her to manifest her human form. Borges instantly feels her presence. They served Crimson together before. That's why he is shocked with the fact that he is still alive. He gets furious with his betrayal to the Dragon God, and releases his power with anger. He makes a huge magic move, but does not reach Snake. Snake, on the other hand, uses an extremely powerful movement, called World Collapse, making Borges explode inside. The movement also destroys everything in its path, including the alternative space and the nebula barrier. This hurts both the Ultimate and Crimson, throwing them on the ground. The sun illuminates all of them, and since the barrier is Borges gone, explodes in flames. He asks the other Kamui to protect the Ultimate, because he is the only one left now. But at this moment, Isa, who ends up with him, decapitating him, the remaining unit runs towards the Ultimate, which is wounded on the ground. Old Kamui is still fighting with Ragnar, and despite being superior in speed, he is having difficulties. Ragnar is giving everything of himself, attacking and defending himself. Old Kamui uses his claws to attack him in all directions, folding them at will. And Ragnar dodges like crazy before counterattacking. Old Kamui blocks the attack, running the risk of freezing his claw. Then he blocks another attack. While he realizes that Ragnar is starting to dominate him, Ragnar cuts off his 2 legs and his tail, making him release the claw. He continues to increase his severity to hit Old Kamui with the hunting arrow. This makes Old Kamui also decide to go with everything. He holds the claw and knocks down Ragnar's attack. The ultimate gets up when Isa and the others reach her and tries to defend herself, but she is sapped in the head by the Nazarena and shouts in pain, making her shots of energy randomly. These explosions eliminate several soldiers and even manage to take the Nazarena from her. Old Kamui, on the other hand, uses his most powerful weapons, the Art of Battle Lightning God. That greatly increases the gravity and pulls everyone down, including the ultimate itself. Ragnar is scared to see this, and Old Kamui transforms and merges with his claw, allowing him to turn his arms into blades. Ragnar also prepares himself with a blade in his arm, but Old Kamui is very sharp. He cuts Ragnar's blade so fast that he didn't even see what happened. He also moves so fast that Ragnar can no longer anticipate his attacks or counterattack. However, Ragnar manages to hit a punch, but still takes a knee to the stomach, and the knee is sharpened like a claw and pierces him. Old Kamui then decapitates Ragnar while increasing his electric charge. On the ground, Crimson is losing a lot of blood because of the injury. He hears Slime wandering around, looking for food. He calls Slime, who comes with a girl from Unit Less. At this moment an explosion occurs because of Old Kamui's attack. The shock wave caused by it pulls everything. Ragnar's head flies. While Old Kamui says that he wants to see the monarch with claws now. He reached his apex and wants to find her, and says he also wants to find the dragon god. Then Ragnar surprises Old Kamui with another massive hunting flash, sending him to the depths of the ground, making his sword break. He then puts his head back in his body and uses Silverine to heal. The little boy here is not very strong. He says he is still feeling the pain, but refuses to let Old Kamui do what he wants. The ultimate drags to the place where Old Kamui fell and screams for his name. He screams back, telling him not to get into his fight. Ragnar then positions himself, and Old Kamui realizes that he will use the same blow from the first time they fought, but he doesn't care so much because he thinks he will be able to resist this move. Then he quickly launches himself against Ragnar. But by doing this, he uses an extra move to transform into his highest form in such a powerful way that it is capable of crushing even the sun. Before reaching Ragnar, Old Kamui thinks about erasing everything he has and become absolute. Meanwhile, Ragnar knows that he needs to improve the home flash, because he still doesn't have enough to defeat Old Kamui. He needs to become even faster than the sound and the lightning and cause the damage instantly. Ragnar then, with this goal, increases his power, and with that he cuts Old Kamui twice before he can hit a single attack. The amount of energy released was absurd and causes a huge explosion that completely erases Old Kamui, while the monarch with claws observes everything. She comments that Old Kamui always defeated his enemy using speed, but ironically ended up being defeated by speed too. While he dies, Old Kamui remembers how he stole all the powers he found along the way and transformed it into his own. But Ragnar's power he can't steal, because even he doesn't understand the source of this power. Then Old Kamui throws his claw against Ragnar. That blocks with the sword, but ends up falling to the ground soon after. The Ultimacia witnesses all this and is shocked to see that Old Kamui disappeared. She simply can't believe, can't even accept. She screams loudly, releasing an absurd amount of magic that makes time stop, literally, when she realizes what happened. She is full of hope, thinking that her power is back and that now she will rewind the time to bring everyone back. But at this moment, the girl from Alesha's unit shoots Crimson's weapon. She had received this mission from Crimson, and when she found out that the Ultimacia wanted to go back in time, she started to doubt, because if she let her do that, she could also see her companions again. But even before she could make a conscious decision, the weapon fired. The girl from Alesha's unit falls on her knees, crying for what she just did, while the Ultimacia dies on the ground. After that, Crimson locks her heart again and leaves the body of the monarch, returning to her normal body. The battlefield is silent, with the corpses of the soldiers spreaded by the rubble. It's not a beautiful scene, not even for Crimson. Ragnar is there, sitting, holding what was left of her sword, and looking at her. He has a vision of his future, and this future self asks him if he is sorry. He says no, because he would not have won without everyone's help. However, he feels sad. His future self walks in his direction, and turns into Crimson, and asks him if he will give up because of his sadness. And he says no, and that he can stand it, but he will never stop destroying the dragons, even if he has to do it alone. Crimson then wakes him up, and they see each other in a capsule. Crimson and Golem take him to the room where Alasha is sleeping. Nazarena, Slime, and Isaac are also there. Crimson says that Alasha was completely cured of Zora's poison. When Isaac was about to end with Zora in the battle, Zora gave him an antidote as a reward. Therefore, she is physically well, but in a coma. He remembers when she asked him to stay with her, because he didn't want him to end up unhappy, and he is very happy to see that she is still alive. And in a way, well, he cries, assuring himself that she will wake up one day and will make him a sword, as she had promised before. And despite everything that happened, a victory is a victory, and all the soldiers of Alasha, live or dead, agree with that. After that, Ragnar packs a piece of his sword, picks up his cape, and leaves to hunt the next line of dragons. And here our story ends. Thanks to everyone who watched. Leave the like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a very nice comment there. Comment everything cold for us to know that you watched until the end. But that's it. Stay with God. Thanks. Bye.